My sister forgot to lock her iPad. That's how it started. Not some big fight, not a dramatic blow-up, just a normal morning that should have been forgettable. I was at my kitchen counter in my apartment near Fort Belvoir, staring at my laptop, trying to make sense of my bank account before heading in. Coffee had already gone cold again. I hadn't slept much. Not unusual, every month looked the same. My paycheck came in, and before I could even think about anything for myself, it was already spoken for. Car payment for my dad, minimums on 2 credit cards my sister was using, monthly transfer to cover my mom's prescriptions and whatever else she needed, then rent, utilities, gas. After that, whatever was left didn't go far. I'd been telling myself for years that it was temporary, that things would stabilize, that this is what you do for family. I was still staring at a number that didn't make sense when the door opened without a knock. Madison. She walked in like she owned the place, which honestly wasn't far from how she treated it. Designer bag on her shoulder, sunglasses pushed up, headphones already in her hand. "Your Wi-Fi still acting weird?" She asked like we'd been in the middle of a conversation. I didn't even look up. No. She dropped her Louis Vuitton bag on the couch and set her iPad on the table with that careless kind of confidence people have when nothing they own ever feels earned. "My phone's dead," she said. "Let me use your charger." There was already a charger on the counter. I slid it toward her without a word. She plugged in her phone, unlocked her iPad, and started scrolling like she had all the time in the world. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out why one of my accounts looked off. The numbers were tighter than usual. "I'd move money around," I asked, still looking at the screen. Madison barely glanced up. "No, why would I?" "Good question." She stood there for maybe 30 seconds before her phone buzzed, rolling her eyes like someone had personally offended her. "I need to take this," she said, already heading toward the hallway. She didn't take the iPad, didn't lock it either. I didn't plan to look. I really didn't. But the screen lit up. A notification popped across the top. A group chat. The name was just family. My name was in the preview. That was enough. I reached over and tapped it. The thread opened, and the first thing I saw was my name again, right there in the middle of a message. Chloe. She's basically our useful idiot. I stopped breathing for a second. I read it again slower, like maybe I'd misunderstood it the first time. Nope. Same words, same tone, no hesitation. I scrolled up. Dozens of messages. Not from one day, not from one week. This wasn't new. This was ongoing. Madison had sent a message earlier that morning. She's been stressed about money again. "Just act normal." My dad replied right after. "Yeah, don't push it too much this week." Then Chloe again. "Relax. She always folds. Just tell her you appreciate her. Works every time." There was a laughing emoji after that. I kept scrolling. Another message from Madison. "She literally thinks helping us is her responsibility." Chloe replied. "It is. She just doesn't realize we're benefiting." Then the one that sat heavier than everything else. "As long as she thinks it's love, she'll keep paying." I didn't even notice how hard I was gripping the edge of the table until my hands started to hurt. There it was. All of it. Not just comments, not just venting. A plan, a system. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they'd been doing it for years. I kept reading. My mom was in there too. Not as loud, not as direct, but she was there. Little comments, agreeing, backing things up, never once pushing back. My dad mostly kept it short, practical, like this was just logistics. Madison carried most of it. Jokes, updates, little strategies. Don't ask for too much at once. Wait until she gets paid. Make it about family. Every line was casual, like they were talking about splitting a bill or planning dinner, except the bill was me. I thought back to the last deployment. Long days, heat that never really went away, and I still made sure every transfer hit on time. I remember sitting on a metal chair outside the comms building checking my phone to confirm payments went through. Meanwhile, they were in a group chat laughing about how predictable I was. I scrolled back down to the message that started it. "She's basically our useful idiot." I stared at it long enough that the words started to blur. Madison's voice carried faintly from the hallway, laughing at whatever call she was on. Light, easy, completely normal, like nothing had changed. But something had. The version of my family I thought I had just disappeared, replaced by this, something colder, more calculated. I didn't feel angry the way I thought I would. No yelling. No urge to storm down the hall and throw the iPad at her. It was quieter than that, heavier, like everything just settled into place. I picked up my phone and opened the camera. One screenshot, then another. I didn't rush it. I went through the thread, capturing everything. Names, timestamps, messages. I made sure nothing got cut off. If they were this comfortable saying it, I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. Footsteps came back down the hallway. I set the iPad exactly where it had been and went back to my laptop like nothing happened. Madison walked in mid-conversation, then ended the call as she grabbed her phone off the charger. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, glancing at me. "Busy week," she nodded, like that explained everything. It did, just not the way you thought. She picked up her iPad without checking it, tossed it into her bag, and headed for the door. "Don't forget Mom's appointment this week," she added on her way out. She said insurance might not cover all of it. Of course she did. "Got it," I said. The door closed behind her. Silence. I sat there for a minute staring at the same numbers on my screen that had confused me earlier. They made sense now. Every dollar, every gap, every time I told myself things would even out eventually. They weren't accidents. They were expected, planned for, relied on. I closed the laptop slowly. Not because I was done, because I knew exactly what I needed to do next. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to fix things for them. I just sat there, completely still, going over every message I'd just read, every payment I'd ever made, every excuse I'd accepted without question. No anger, no panic, just clarity. They thought I didn't know. And right now, they still thought that. I leaned back in my chair and opened my phone again, pulling up the screenshots just to make sure I hadn't imagined any of it. Same messages, same tone, same people. Nothing changed just because I wanted it to. I zoomed in on one of Madison's texts. "She's been stressed about money again. Just act normal. Act normal." Like this was a routine. Like this was something they'd done so many times it didn't even feel wrong anymore. I scrolled further. "Don't ask for too much at once. Wait until she gets paid. Make it about family." Each message hit differently now. Not because they were new, but because I could finally see them clearly. Every conversation I had had with them over the past few years started lining up in my head like pieces of a puzzle I didn't realize I was building. Every time Madison called me right after payday, every time my mom said something like, "We don't like asking, but you're the only one we can count on." Every time my dad acted uncomfortable bringing up money, like he hated doing it but had no choice. None of it was spontaneous. None of it was real. It was timed, planned, coordinated. I stood up and walked over to the sink, dumping out the cold coffee I hadn't touched. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't even angry yet, just focused. I grabbed a clean mug, poured fresh coffee, and leaned against the counter, reading again. There was a message from Chloe that I'd skipped over the first time. She literally thinks helping us is her responsibility. Madison replied almost instantly. "It is. She just doesn't realize we're benefiting." I let out a quiet breath through my nose. That one explained a lot. I'd spent years convincing myself that what I was doing was normal, that I was just stepping up, that this was what a good daughter, a good sister did when things got tough. But this wasn't me stepping up. This was them stepping back and letting me carry everything on purpose. I scrolled again, slower this time. My mom had sent a message a few weeks ago. "Don't forget to thank her. She responds better when she feels appreciated." There was no pushback from anyone. "No, maybe we should stop. No, this isn't right. Just agreement, strategy." I set the mug down and pulled out a chair, sitting again. But this time, I wasn't looking at the bank account. I was looking at the timeline. 5 years. That's how long this had been going on. It started small, a little help here, a bill there. Back when I got my first steady paycheck after training, it made sense. They needed help. I could provide it. Then it became routine, then expected, then automatic. And somewhere along the way, I stopped questioning it. I thought back to Poland, winter rotation. I remember standing outside in the freezing wind, checking my phone during a break just to make sure a transfer went through. Madison had texted me that morning, "Hey, quick thing, my card's maxed out. Can you cover it this time? I'll figure it out next month." I didn't hesitate. I never did. Now, I knew why she sounded so confident when she asked, because she already knew the answer. I went back to the chat. There it was again. As long as she thinks it's love, she'll keep paying. I sat with that one for a while. That line wasn't just about money, it was about control. They didn't need to force anything. They didn't need to argue or pressure me too hard. They just needed to frame it the right way. Family, responsibility, loyalty, words that made it hard to say no without feeling like the bad person. I picked up my phone again and opened my banking app, flipping between accounts, balances, transactions, dates, everything lined up with what I just read. Every unexpected expense they told me about, every will pay you back. Every, just this once. None of it was random. It was consistent, predictable. I checked one of the credit cards Madison had been using under my account. High utilization, way higher than I remembered. A few charges from places I knew she liked. Expensive ones. I hadn't questioned them before. I just assumed she'd gotten carried away, like she always did. Now it looked different. Now it looked like she never had any reason to stop. Why would she? From her point of view, there were no consequences. I covered everything, always. I switched over to my email and saw a notification I'd ignored earlier. Credit monitoring alert. I opened it. Your credit utilization has increased significantly over the past 30 days. That wasn't just annoying. That was a problem. In my line of work, financial stability isn't optional. It's part of the job. You don't keep your clearance if your finances start looking unstable or risky. I knew that. I'd sat through enough briefings to know exactly how that worked. Debt makes you vulnerable. Vulnerability makes you a risk. A risk gets flagged. This wasn't just about being used anymore. This could actually affect my career. I stared at the screen for a second, letting that settle in. All those years of doing everything right, keeping my record clean, staying on top of everything, and it could get messed up because I trusted the wrong people. That hit harder than anything in the group chat. I leaned back again, looking up at the ceiling for a second, then back down at my phone. I opened the screenshots one more time, not to double-check, to memorize names, words, tone. I didn't want to forget any of it. I wanted it clear, precise, because whatever I did next, it wasn't going to be emotional. It wasn't going to be a fight. It wasn't going to be a conversation where they talked over me or twisted things around until I felt guilty again. I'd done that too many times already. This time needed to be different. I picked up my mug, took a sip, and set it back down. Then I opened my email and started drafting a message. Not to them, to someone who could actually do something with information like this. I paused for a second before typing, not because I wasn't sure, but because I wanted to get it exactly right. No extra words, no explanation I didn't need, just facts. Clear, simple, controlled. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then started moving. Not fast, not rushed, just steady, like everything had finally lined up. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about how to help them. I was thinking about how to stop. I deleted the first draft and started over. The message needed to be clean. No emotion, no rambling, just the facts of what needed to change. I typed out a request to my bank first. Remove all authorized users. Freeze any pending transactions tied to secondary cards. Flag unusual activity if anything tried to go through after today. I read it twice, made a small correction, then sent it. No hesitation. Next email. Financial advisor. I hadn't talked to him in months, mostly because every time I thought about planning for myself, something else came up. Something they needed. Something urgent. I kept this one just as simple. I needed a full review of my accounts. Every outgoing transfer for the last 5 years. Credit usage, risk exposure, especially anything that could impact my clearance. That part mattered. I sent it. Then I sat there for a second, staring at my inbox before opening a third message. This one took a little longer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I'd never actually written anything like it before. I addressed it to a civil attorney a colleague had recommended a while back. I'd saved the contact and never used it. At the time, it felt unnecessary, too extreme. Now, it felt overdue. I outlined everything in bullet points: financial support over multiple years, accounts in my name used by others, evidence of intentional manipulation. I attached 2 screenshots from the group chat. Not all of them, just enough. Enough to make the situation clear without turning it into a novel. I didn't ask for anything specific, just requested a consultation. I read through it once, then hit send. 3 emails. That was it. No speeches, no confrontation, no warnings, just action. I closed my laptop and checked the time. I still had to get to base. The rest of the morning moved like any other. Traffic, security gate, parking lot, that was always just a little too full. Nothing about the outside world had changed, which made it almost strange, because everything on the inside had. I went through my usual routine, but I was more aware than usual. Every conversation felt sharper, every task more focused. Numbers made sense in a way they hadn't earlier. I spent most of the morning reviewing supply requests, signing off on inventory logs, answering emails, standard work. At some point, my phone buzzed. Madison. I didn't pick up. A few minutes later, a text. Hey, quick question. Did you move money out of the account? I looked at it for a second, then locked my phone and set it face down on the desk. Back to work. Another buzz. Rachel. Then another. My card just got declined. I kept reading the document in front of me, not ignoring it, just not reacting. There was a difference. The next message came with a little more urgency. Is something wrong with the account? I let that one sit too. For years, every message like that had gotten an immediate response. I'd drop whatever I was doing and fix it. Transfer money, call the bank, smooth things over. This time, nothing moved. By lunch, the messages were stacking. Missed calls, voicemails, texts shifting from confusion to irritation. This isn't funny. Can you answer? I'm at a store right now. I picked up my phone, read through all of them once, then locked it again. No reply. A few minutes later, another message. Dad. I watched it ring, then stop, then ring again. Voicemail. A minute later, a text came in. Call me. Short, direct, no context. Same pattern as always. He didn't ask questions over text. He called, said just enough to make it sound urgent, and expected me to fill in the rest. I finished eating, threw away the tray, and headed back. The afternoon went the same way. Work got done, emails got answered, meetings happened. My phone kept buzzing. Mom, this time, sweetheart, I think there's been a mistake with the insurance payment. Of course, there was another message right after. It says, it didn't go through. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a second. For years, that message alone would have been enough. I would have fixed it, immediately, no questions asked. Now it just looked like another line in a script I'd already read. I opened my phone again, scrolled through the messages, then opened the screenshots. Same words, same tone. She always folds. I locked my phone. Toward the end of the day, I checked my email. The bank had already responded. Request received. Authorized users removed. Additional security measures in place. That was fast. Good. Another email came in from my advisor. He confirmed he'd started pulling the reports and would have a full breakdown within a couple of days. Then the attorney short reply available tomorrow afternoon for a consultation. I read it once, then flagged it. Everything was moving quietly, exactly how I needed it to. When I got back to my apartment that evening, it felt the same as always. Same couch, same table, same silence. I set my keys down and walked over to the counter, dropping my bag in the chair. My phone buzzed again. Madison. I picked it up this time, not to answer, just to read. Rachel, what is going on? None of my cards are working. A second message came right after. Did you seriously shut everything off? I looked at the screen for a second, then typed. Not a paragraph, not an explanation, just one line. I know everything. I stared at it for a second before sending it. Then I set the phone down on the counter and stepped back. It buzzed almost immediately. Then again and again. Calls, messages, notifications, stacking faster than before. I didn't move, didn't reach for it, didn't feel the urge to fix anything. I just stood there listening to the sound of it going off, knowing exactly what every message on that screen looked like, without needing to read a single one of them. The phone kept buzzing on the counter, lighting up the kitchen over and over like it was trying to get my attention by force. I walked past it, opened the fridge, stood there for a second, not really looking for anything, just letting the noise exist without reacting to it. That was new. Normally, I would have picked it up before the second call even finished ringing, fixed whatever was wrong, smoothed everything over before it could turn into a problem. Now, it was already a problem, just not mine. I grabbed a bottle of water, closed the fridge, and leaned against the counter. The screen lit up again. Mom, then Dad, then Madison again. 3 calls in less than a minute. I picked up the phone not to answer, just to see the messages stacking underneath my last one. I know everything. Madison, what does that even mean? Dad, Rachel, call me now. Mom, sweetheart, please don't do this over a misunderstanding. I let out a quiet breath. Misunderstanding. That word showed up fast. I set the phone down again and walked over to the sink, rinsing out my cup from earlier, like I had all the time in the world, because I did. That was the part they didn't understand yet. For years, everything had been urgent on their timeline, their problems, their deadlines, their needs. Now, they were reacting to mine, and I wasn't in a hurry. The phone buzzed again. Madison. Another message. If this is about something you saw, you're taking it the wrong way. Of course, I was. I dried my hands and finally picked the phone back up, scrolling slowly this time. More messages, faster now. Dad, you're overreacting. Mom, we can talk about this. Madison, it was just a joke. I read that one twice. Just a joke. I tapped the screen and opened the screenshots again, flipping through them like I needed a reminder. Don't ask for too much at once. Wait until she gets paid. She always folds. Yeah, hilarious. I locked the phone and set it face down again. No response. Not because I didn't have anything to say, because they didn't deserve to hear it yet. I walked into the living room and sat down on the couch, letting the silence between notifications stretch out. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't calculating how to fix something for them. I wasn't trying to find a middle ground. I wasn't thinking about how to keep the peace. I was thinking about boundaries, real ones, the kind that don't move just because someone feels uncomfortable. My phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification. Madison. I let it play on speaker. Rachel. Seriously, what is wrong with you? I'm at Zara right now, and my car just got declined in front of everyone. This is embarrassing. If you did something, you need to fix it. Like now. Click. I stared at the phone for a second. Embarrassing. That was her problem. Not the years of money moving out of my account without question. Not the messages in that group chat. Not the part where she knew exactly what she was doing. No, the problem was her card getting declined in a store. I leaned back into the couch and let out a short laugh. Not loud, just enough to acknowledge how ridiculous that sounded now. Another voicemail came in. Dad this time. Rachel, I don't know what's going on, but my car payment didn't go through. The bank says there's nothing pending. If you moved money, you need to move it back. We can't have things bouncing like this. I shook my head slightly. We hadn't been a we in a long time. I just hadn't realized it. The next message came from Mom again. Your prescription payment didn't go through either. I tried to pick it up, and they said it was declined. I need that medication. That one sat differently. Not because it changed anything, but because that's how they always got me. Urgency, health, guilt. The part of me that used to respond automatically kicked in for a second. Fix it. Transfer the money. Don't make it worse. I felt it. Then it passed, because now I knew what came after. Another request. Another situation. Another reason I couldn't say no. I picked up my phone and typed one line. Talk to Madison. I hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came almost instantly. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the contact for the attorney again and confirmed the appointment for the next afternoon. Then I opened my calendar and blocked out the time. No conflicts, no rescheduling. This wasn't getting pushed. The phone buzzed again. Madison. Now the tone had shifted. Rachel stopped being dramatic. A few seconds later, you're acting like we did something terrible. I looked at the message, then opened the screenshots one more time. The words were still there, clear as ever. I locked the phone, set it down, walked over to the window. Outside, everything looked normal. Cars moving, people going about their day. Nothing about the world reflected what was happening in my apartment. And that was fine. This wasn't something I needed anyone else to see. Not yet. Behind me, the phone buzzed again and again. The sound blended into the background after a while, like it belonged there, like it always had. Only difference now was, I wasn't answering it. I stood there for a minute, then turned back, grabbed my bag, and headed toward the door. I had things to do. Real ones. Not reactions, not damage control, actual steps. And for once, none of them involved making their lives easier. I drove straight from base to the bank without going home. No detour. No time to sit and think myself into second-guessing anything. The building looked the same as always. Clean, quiet, controlled. The kind of place where everything is documented and nothing is based on emotion. Exactly what I needed. I walked in, checked in at the front, and asked to speak with someone about my accounts. Not customer service, not general help, someone who could actually make changes. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from a banker in a small office, folder open in front of me. My phone next to it, screenshots ready if I needed them. I said straight to it, I need to remove all authorized users from my accounts. No explanation, no story. She nodded and started typing. All of them. All of them. She glanced up briefly, like she was used to people hesitating at that point. I didn't. Okay, she said. We'll take care of that right now. A few clicks? A few confirmations? Then she paused. Do you want to issue new cards as well? Yes. Any concerns about unauthorized access? Yes. Still no details. She didn't ask them, didn't need them. This wasn't personal to her. It was just process. All right, she said. We'll cancel all existing cards and reissue new ones under your name only. No secondary users. Good. That was step 1. Next, I said I need to separate any linked accounts, transfer shared access, anything tied to my profile that isn't mine. More typing. She pulled up my accounts one by one, reviewing connections I hadn't even thought about in years. Looks like there are recurring transfers set up, she said monthly. I already knew that. Yes, cancel all of them. She clicked through the list. Car payment account. Transfer to Madison. Transfer to my mom. Each one disappeared with a quiet confirmation. No drama, no argument. Just gone. Done. She said, Is there anything else? I looked at the screen for a second, scanning everything one more time. Balances, ownership, access, clean. For the first time in a long time, everything was actually under my control. Yes, I said. I want a note added to the account. Any attempt to read users or access needs to be verified directly with me. Absolutely, she added. Then she printed out a summary and slid it across the desk. Everything's updated. You'll receive new cards within 5 to 7 business days. I picked up the paper, glanced over it, then folded it and put it in my bag. Thank you. Simple. I stood up and walked out. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Outside, the air felt colder than it had that morning. Or maybe I just noticed it more. Either way, it felt different. I got back in my car and sat there for a second before turning the engine on. My phone buzzed. I didn't even need to look to know who it was. Still, I picked it up. Madison, 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a message. Rachel, this is getting ridiculous. None of my cards are working anywhere. What did you do? I set the phone down in the passenger seat and started driving. The next message came through before I even made it out of the parking lot. Dad, the bank says the payment didn't go through. They're asking for immediate payment. Call me. Another one right after. This isn't something you ignore. I merged onto the road, eyes forward. For years, I'd been trained to respond to that tone. Immediate. Fix it now. Don't let it escalate. Now it just sounded like noise. My phone buzzed again. Mom? Sweetheart, I'm at the pharmacy, and they're saying the insurance didn't cover it. I don't know what happened. Can you check? There it was again. Urgency. Health. Guilt. I kept driving. No answer. A few minutes later, another message from Madison. Are you seriously doing this over a text message? Over something you think you saw? Think that word almost made me laugh. I pulled into my apartment complex, parked, and finally picked up my phone again. Scrolled, read everything. Same pattern. Denial, minimizing, shifting blame. Exactly like the group chat. I typed one line. I didn't think I read it. I hit send. The reply came fast. You're twisting it. Of course I was. That's how it works when the truth isn't convenient. I got out of the car and headed inside. By the time I reached my door, my phone was buzzing again. I unlocked it, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me. Silence, except for the phone. I tossed my keys on the counter and set my bag down. Then I finally listened to one of the voicemails. Madison's voice came through sharper this time. Rachel, you need to fix this. Like right now, this isn't funny anymore. I have things I need to pay for. Need. I leaned against the counter and replayed that word in my head. Wait until she gets paid. She always folds. I ended the voicemail and deleted it. Another one from Dad. Rachel, we're not playing games here. This affects all of us. No, it didn't. It affected them for once. I set the phone down and walked over to the table, pulling out the printed summary from the bank. Everything was exactly how I wanted it. No shared access, no recurring transfers, no loose ends. I sat down and looked at it again, slower this time. Every line represented something I'd been doing automatically for years. Something I never questioned, something they expected. Not anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't pick it up right away. I just sat there, looking at the paper, letting the sound fill the room without reacting to it. Then, after a minute, I reached for the phone and unlocked it. Madison again. But the message had changed. Less attitude, more edge. Rachel, if you don't answer me, I'm coming over. I stared at the screen for a second, then locked it, set it down, and didn't move. The knock came harder than I expected, not hesitant, not polite, sharp, repeated, like she already knew I was inside and didn't feel the need to wait. I didn't rush to the door. I walked over at a normal pace, stopped just short of opening it, and looked through the peephole. Madison, hair pulled back, no sunglasses this time, phone in one hand, the other already raised to knock again. I unlocked the door but didn't open it all the way, just enough to create space between us. "What are you doing?" she said immediately, pushing the door wider before I could stop her. I stepped back just enough to keep distance, but not enough to invite her in. She walked in anyway. Of course she did. Her eyes moved quickly around the apartment like she was expecting something to be different. "Seriously, Rachel, what is this?" she said, turning back to me. "My cards aren't working. Dad's freaking out. Mom can't pick up her meds, and you're just ignoring everyone." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I'm not ignoring anything." She let out a short laugh. "Oh, really? Because that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like you're finally dealing with something on your own." That stopped her for a second. Not long, just enough for it to register. Then she shook her head. "No, don't do that. Don't twist this into something it's not. This is about that chat, isn't it?" she said. "You saw something, and now you're acting like we betrayed you or something." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She exhaled sharply and paced a couple of steps like she was trying to organize her thoughts. "It was a joke," she said, turning back toward me. "That's how we talk. You're taking it way too seriously." I held her gaze. All of it was a joke. She hesitated just for a second, then shrugged. "Yeah, obviously." I nodded slowly. "Wait until she gets paid." Her face tightened. "Don't ask for too much at once." She looked away for a second, then back at me. "As long as she thinks it's love, she'll keep paying." That one stayed in the air a little longer. She didn't respond right away this time. Didn't laugh it off, didn't brush it aside. She shifted her weight, crossing her arms. "Now you're pulling things out of context," she said. "What context makes that better?" She didn't answer. Instead, she changed direction. Classic. "Okay, fine," she said. "Even if it sounded bad, you don't just cut everything off overnight. That's not normal." "No," I said. "What's not normal is planning how to use someone and calling it family." Her jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." I almost smiled at that. "You're being predictable." That hit. She didn't like that one. "You always do this," she said, voice rising slightly. "You take something small and turn it into a huge deal." "Small. Yes, small, it's just how people talk. You act like we were sitting there plotting against you or something." I let the silence sit for a second. Then I said it. "You were..." She shook her head immediately. "No, we weren't. You were deciding when to ask me for money." "That's not..." "You were deciding how to ask. That's not what you were deciding how to keep me paying." Her voice cut off. She looked at me, searching for something to push back with. Didn't find it. Instead, she took a different approach. Softer. "Rachel," she said, lowering her tone. "We're your family. We're not trying to hurt you." I watched her for a second. "You didn't have to try." That landed harder than anything else, I'd said. Her expression shifted again. Less defensive, more calculating. "You know, we appreciate everything you've done," she said. There it was, right on cue. I let out a quiet breath. According to the chat, appreciation is part of the strategy. She blinked clearly, not expecting that. That's not... Forget to thank her. She responds better when she feels appreciated. I repeated it exactly, word for word. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Then she looked away. Silence filled the room. Not comfortable, not neutral, heavy. She walked over to the couch and sat down, rubbing her forehead like she was the one dealing with something overwhelming. "This is insane," she muttered. "You're blowing everything out of proportion." I didn't move, didn't sit, didn't soften. I turned off access to my accounts. That's it. That's not it, Rachel. She snapped, looking back up at me. That affects all of us. That's the point. She stared at me longer this time, like she was finally starting to understand that this wasn't going to go the way it always had. You're really doing this, she said. Yes. No warning, no conversation. You just cut us off. I tilted my head slightly. You had a whole group chat. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Nothing came out for once. Nothing. I let the silence stretch. Didn't rush to fill it. Didn't explain. Didn't justify. After a few seconds, she stood up again, grabbing her bag off the couch. This is messed up, she said, heading toward the door. You're going to regret this. I didn't respond. She stopped at the door, turning back one last time. You always come around, she added. You always do. That part almost sounded confident, like she believed it, like history was on her side. I held her gaze. Not this time. She stared at me for another second, then shook her head and walked out, closing the door harder than she needed to. Silence again. Real silence this time. No knocking, no voice, just the quiet hum of the apartment settling back into place. I walked over to the door, locked it, then checked the handle once to make sure. Then I turned back, looking at the space she just left. Nothing was broken, nothing was thrown, but everything felt different, cleaner, clearer. I walked back to the table and sat down, pulling my phone toward me. The messages were still coming in. Dad, Mom, Madison again. Different words, same pattern. I didn't open them. Instead, I unlocked my phone and pulled up the email from the attorney. Appointment confirmed. Tomorrow afternoon. I tapped the address, saved it, then set the phone back down. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just a steady, quiet understanding of what needed to happen next. I woke up before my alarm and didn't bother going back to sleep. The apartment was quiet. No messages, no calls yet. For once, the silence came first. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed out without checking my phone. Traffic was light, the kind of morning where everything feels a little too normal compared to what's actually going on. The attorney's office was in a clean, low-rise building about 20 minutes from base. Nothing flashy, no dramatic glass towers, just a place where things get handled. I checked in at the front desk, gave my name, and waited. A few minutes later, a woman stepped out and called me back. Rachel Hayes, that's me. Her office was simple, organized, no clutter, files stacked neatly, desk clear except for a laptop and a notepad. She motioned for me to sit. I brought my phone with the screenshots already open. I brought more, I said. She nodded. Good. No small talk, no easing into it. Straight to work. She picked up the phone and started scrolling. Didn't react immediately. Didn't interrupt, just read. That alone told me something. She'd seen things like this before. When she finally looked up, her expression wasn't surprised, just focused. How long has this been going on? She asked. About 5 years, I said. She gave a small nod, like that lined up with what she was seeing. And all financial accounts are in your name? Yes. Some shared access. Authorized users. One co-signed loan. She made a note. And you've already removed access? Yes. Another note. Good. She leaned back slightly. Based on what you've shown me, this isn't just family conflict. This is a pattern of financial exploitation. Hearing it said out loud hit differently. Not emotional, not personal, just defined. I nodded once. That's what it looked like to me. She turned the phone back toward me. These messages matter, she said. They show intent. That's important. Intent. That word stayed in my head because that's what made this different. They didn't accidentally take advantage of me. They planned it. What are my options? I asked. She didn't rush the answer. You have a few paths. You can walk away and leave it as is, which I'd already started doing, or you can document everything and pursue recovery of funds depending on how far you want to take it. Recovery. I didn't respond right away. She continued, even if you don't pursue anything formally, having everything documented protects you, especially if they try to flip the situation or make claims against you. That part mattered, because if there was one thing I knew about my family, it was that they didn't just stop when something didn't go their way. They adjusted. How much are we talking about? She asked. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I've been tracking it. Not perfectly, but enough. I slid the papers across the desk. She flipped through them. Transfers, payments, statements, line after line. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Over 100,000, she said. Rough estimate. She closed the folder and tapped it lightly. That's not small. No, it wasn't. And somehow you'd convinced yourself it was normal. She looked back at me. Do you want to pursue this? I thought about it, not long, because the answer wasn't as simple as yes or no. I want everything documented, I said. I want it clear. I want it on record. If they come at me, I'm not explaining anything from scratch. She nodded. That's the right approach. She turned her laptop toward herself and started typing. We'll put together a formal summary. Timeline, amounts, supporting evidence. It doesn't mean you're filing anything immediately, but it gives you leverage. Leverage. That was new. I'd never had that before in this situation. It had always been one-sided. She continued typing, then paused. One more thing, she said. Have they contacted you since you cut them off? Yes. How? Calls, messages. One showed up at my apartment. She didn't react to that the way most people would. Just noted it. If that escalates, we can address it, she said. But for now, don't engage more than necessary. Keep everything. Screenshots, voicemails, all of it. I nodded. Already doing that. She closed the laptop slightly. I'll have a draft ready in a couple of days, she said. We'll review it together. Okay. I stood up, gathering my things. No sudden move, she added. You've already done the most important part. What's that? You stopped the flow. I almost smiled at that because that was exactly what it felt like. Something that had been running non-stop for years had finally been shut off. I left her office and stepped back outside. The air felt sharper than before, clearer. I pulled out my phone. It didn't take long to see the shift. The messages weren't just frequent anymore. They were different, more aggressive, more direct. Madison, you really think you can just cut us off and walk away? Dad, this isn't how family works. Mom, we need to talk about what you've done. I read them all, didn't respond. Instead, I opened the screenshots again. The same ones. The ones that explained everything better than any argument ever could. I closed them and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Then I got in my car and drove home. When I walked into my apartment, everything looked exactly how I left it. Same couch, same table, same quiet. I dropped my keys on the counter and set the folder down next to them. For a second, I just stood there, not thinking about what they were saying, not thinking about how they felt, just thinking about the fact that for the first time in years, I had everything I needed. Proof, control, options, and none of it depended on them. I spread everything out across the table and started organizing it into something that actually made sense. Not emotional, not messy, just numbers, dates, amounts, accounts. 5 years doesn't feel long when you're living through it 1 month at a time, but when you lay it out all at once, it hits differently. I opened my laptop and pulled up my statements, matching them with what I'd already printed. Transfers to my dad's account every month. Same amount. Car payment, never late, never missed. Then Madison's credit card. Charges from places I recognized immediately. Zara, Sephora, restaurants I'd never even high balances. Minimum payments, then another spike over and over. I lined those up next. Then my mom. Smaller amounts at first, then gradually more. Medical expenses, groceries, unexpected costs, all labeled differently, all coming from the same place. Me. I leaned back in my chair for a second and looked at the full spread. It wasn't chaotic. It was structured, predictable. That was the part that stood out the most. Nothing about this was random. I opened a blank document and started building a timeline. Year 1, small transfers, occasional help. Year 2, regular payments, credit card access. Year 3, higher amounts, more frequent emergencies. Year 4, everything became automatic. Year 5, they didn't even pretend it was temporary anymore. They just expected it. I typed it all out in bullet points. Clear, simple. Then I added totals next to each section. The numbers climbed fast. Faster than I expected. I stopped once when it crossed 50,000. Then again at 75. Then I kept going. By the time I finished, the total sat just over 110,482. I stared at it for a second, not shocked, just aware. That number wasn't the result of one bad decision. It was thousands of small ones made consistently without question. I saved the document and leaned forward again, adjusting a few of the papers on the table. Then I opened my phone and went back to the screenshots. I read them again, this time with the numbers in front of me. Don't ask for too much at once. Wait until she gets paid. She always folds. I glanced back at the timeline. Every one of those messages matched something. A payment, a transfer, a spike in spending. They weren't just talking, they were tracking me. Not directly, but close enough. I sat there for a minute, letting that settle. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't need to look. Still I did. Madison, this is ridiculous. You shut everything off and now you're acting like you're the victim. I let out a quiet breath. Victim. That word had been flipped fast. I set the phone down without responding and went back to the document. I added another section. Intent. Under it, I listed the key messages from the group chat. Short quotes, no commentary, no emotion, just their words. That was enough. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Dad, you need to fix this. This isn't how things work. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I highlighted the total amount at the bottom of the page. 110,482. I read it again. Then I opened the message. This isn't how things work. I typed a response. It's exactly how it works now. Sent. No explanation, no argument. The reply came fast. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but not in the way he thought. I locked the phone and set it aside again. Back to the table. I organized the papers into clean stacks, one for each category. Car, credit, transfers, medical. Then I clipped them together. Not because I needed to send them yet, but because I needed them ready. Complete, accurate, controlled. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a voicemail. Mom. I let it play on speaker while I kept working. Rachel, I don't understand what's happening. The pharmacy said the payment was declined again. I need that medication. You can't just stop everything like this. Her voice sounded softer than the others, more fragile. That used to work. It still did a little. I paused, hands resting on the table, listening until the message ended. Then I reached over and stopped the playback for a second. I just sat there because that was always the moment. The one where I'd step in, fix it, make sure everything was taken care of. Not because it was fair, but because it was easier than dealing with the alternative. I looked down at the numbers again, then at the screenshots, then back at the numbers. The pattern was clear. Every time I stepped in, it didn't solve anything. It reset the cycle. I picked up my phone and typed a message. Talk to Dad. I sent it before I could rethink it. It wasn't cold. It was accurate because, for the first time, I wasn't the default solution. A few seconds later, another message from Madison came through. You're unbelievable. After everything we've done for you, this is how you act. I actually laughed at that one. Not loud, just enough to acknowledge how backwards it sounded. I picked up the top sheet from the stack and looked at the total again after everything they'd done for me. Right. I set it back down and leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Everything was there. Every dollar, every message, every decision. For years, it had all been spread out, hard to see as one thing. Now it wasn't. Now it was one story. Clear, complete, and not theirs to rewrite. I was halfway through reviewing the timeline again when I heard the sound. Not a knock this time. A soft click. Subtle, but wrong. I froze for half a second, listening. Another small movement near the front door. Then the handle turned. My eyes moved toward it slowly. The door opened. Madison stepped in like she still had every right to. No hesitation, no permission, just walked in. I stood up immediately. How did you get in? She held up a small key between her fingers like it was obvious. Spare key. You forgot. I didn't forget. I just didn't think she'd actually use it. That was on me. I walked toward the door and closed it behind her, locking it this time. Then I turned back. You don't come in here like that anymore. Oh, anymore? She rolled her eyes. Relax. I've had this key forever. Not anymore. She ignored that. Of course she did. Her attention shifted to the table. All the papers, all the numbers, all the evidence laid out in clean stacks. She stepped closer, picking up the top sheet before I could stop her. What is all this? She asked. I didn't answer. She skimmed it, then slowed down. Message set. You said, Teep took. Message wine. ChatGPT said, then read more carefully. Her expression changed, not dramatically, just enough. What is this supposed to be? She asked, holding the paper up slightly. A record, I said. She let out a short breath. Of what? I looked at her. You already know. She glanced back down at the number at the bottom of the page. Then back at me. You're seriously tracking everything now. I've always been paying everything. That's not the same thing. It is now. She set the paper down harder than necessary. This is insane, she said. You're acting like we've been stealing from you. I didn't move. You were. Her head snapped up. No, we weren't. Yes, you were. She shook her head immediately. No, you helped. That's different. Help implies a choice. And you had one. I tilted my head slightly. Did I? She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she took a step closer. You're twisting everything to make yourself look like the victim. That word again. I let it sit. Then I reached over, picked up my phone, and opened the screenshots. I turned it toward her. Read it. She didn't take the phone. Didn't look at it. I've already seen it, she said. Then you know I know you're taking it out of context. What context makes useful idiot, okay? She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked to the screen for a second, then away. Silence for a few seconds. Neither of us said anything. Then she crossed her arms. You're really going to do this, she said. Turn this into some kind of legal thing. I didn't confirm it, didn't deny it. Just watched her. That was enough. Her expression tightened. You're unbelievable, she said, after everything we've done for you. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. Say that again, I said. She blinked. What? Say it again. She hesitated, then repeated it slower, this time. After everything we've done for you. I picked up the top sheet again and held it up. Read the number. She didn't. I already know what it says. Then say it. She didn't move. Didn't speak because saying it out loud would have made it real in a way she couldn't twist. I set the paper back down. That's what I've done, I said. Not the other way around. Her jaw tightened. You didn't have to. That's not what your messages say. She looked away again. Just for a second, then back at me. You're blowing this up into something it's not, she said. This is family. We help each other. I nodded once. That's what I thought too. And now I know better. She exhaled sharply and turned away, pacing a few steps like she was trying to burn off the frustration. You're going to regret this, she said again. You already said that. Because it's true. Because it's convenient. She stopped pacing and turned back. You think you can just walk away from us? I didn't answer immediately. Just looked at her, then said it. Yes. That one landed hard. Not because it was loud. Because it was final. Her expression shifted again, less confident, more uncertain. You don't mean that, she said. I do. She shook her head. But there was less conviction in it now. You always come back, she said. Not as strong as before. More like she was reminding herself. I held her gaze. Not this time. Silence again. Heavier now. She looked around the apartment like she was seeing it differently for the first time. Like something had changed that she couldn't undo. Then her eyes landed back on the table on the papers on the number. She didn't pick them up again. Didn't argue about them. Just looked for a few seconds longer than before. Then she grabbed her bag off the chair. This isn't over, she said. I didn't respond. She walked to the door, unlocked it, and stepped out. This time she didn't slam it, just closed it. I walked over and locked it again. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and set them on the counter. Right next to them, I placed the spare key, the one she'd used. I picked it up, looked at it for a second, then dropped it into the trash. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just gone. Behind me, the table was still covered in numbers, still organized, still real. And for the first time, no one else in that room had any control over them. I slept better that night than I had in years. No late-night transfers, no checking balances before bed, no messages I needed to respond to before something got worse. Just quiet. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed wasn't stress. It was space. Real space. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the same kitchen counter I'd been at a few days ago, staring at the same laptop. But this time, the numbers made sense. No gaps, no sudden drops I couldn't explain. No accounts tied to anyone else. Everything was mine, exactly how it should have been the whole time. I took a sip of coffee and opened my email. Jessica had sent over the first draft of the documentation. Clean, structured, timeline, total supporting notes. Everything laid out in a way that didn't need emotion to explain it. Facts did the work on their own. I read through it once, then again, making small notes, tightening a few details, adding dates where I had them. Nothing dramatic, just accuracy. By the time I finished, my phone buzzed. I didn't rush to grab it. That habit was gone. When I finally picked it up, the tone had shifted again. Fewer messages, shorter ones. Madison, so this is it. Dad, you're really not going to fix this. Mom, we need to figure out how to move forward. Move forward. That one stood out. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement, just adjustment. Like they were starting to realize the system they'd been relying on wasn't coming back. I set the phone down and went back to the document. Made one final edit, saved it. Then I replied to Jessica, "Looks good, let's finalize." Simple, no hesitation. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, letting the quiet settle in again. No urgency, no pressure, just control. Later that week, I started packing. Not everything, just the important stuff. Documents, clothes, a few personal things. The apartment had served its purpose, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Too many patterns tied to it. Too many routines that needed to be broken. I found a smaller place across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Fully mine. No spare keys floating around, no unannounced visits. No one walking in like they had a claim to it.